He tried to destroy me and I almost lost everything. But I fought and today I live in total control of my life. I never imagined my life could change so quickly, so completely. I woke up that morning with my phone in my hand, thinking about trivial work matters, unaware that everything was about to fall apart. When I heard my father's lawyer's voice telling me he had passed away the night before, something inside me broke. It was a mixture of shock, pain, and fear that couldn't be contained. My mind filled with images of him smiling, helping me with my college work, telling me everything would be okay, and I couldn't imagine never hearing that voice again. The world felt gray, heavy, without enough air to breathe. I felt my throat tighten and tears burn my eyes as I tried to understand that my life would never be the same. But I didn't yet know that the worst part was yet to come. My name is Beatriz. I'm 32 years old, an accountant, and I've always prided myself on being organized, rational, and independent. I lived with my husband, Renato, in a downtown apartment and thought I had my life figured out. A stable career, a marriage, dreams that seemed possible. But my father's death brought more than pain. It brought revelations that would change my outlook on everything. I discovered, through Dr. Ricardo Mendez, my father's trusted lawyer, that my inheritance was conditioned by very strict rules. He had created mechanisms to protect me from self-interested individuals. And, at that moment, fear began to mix with a painful suspicion about Renato. The initial shock paralyzed me. I remembered moments when Renato had shown affection, compliments, gestures of support, and everything seemed genuine. But as we talked about the will, I noticed small manipulations subtly embedded in routine that I hadn't noticed before. My heart raced, and I felt anger boiling, mixed with a growing fear of being alone in facing this. Every call, every word from him, carried a tension I couldn't decipher, and I felt increasingly vulnerable, betrayed, and alone. The internal struggle was constant. On one side, the pain of losing my father. On the other, the doubt about who I could trust. Memories of gestures that once seemed loving now filled me with doubt and discomfort. My body reacted. Insomnia, tightness in my chest, hunger that disappeared, and anxiety that seemed to rise up in my throat until it cut off my breath. I tried to talk to Renato about my feelings, but he dodged, manipulated the conversations, making it seem like I was exaggerating. That's when I understood that my battle wasn't just against the pain of loss, but also against someone who should have been by my side, but was against me. There were endless nights when I cried alone, staring at the ceiling, my heart aching. I remembered my father's advice about independence and emotional intelligence, but it seemed impossible to apply it in that chaos. Every decision about the will, every clause, reminded me of Renato trying to convince me to give in, to give up what was rightfully mine. My body trembled, my mind screamed at me to stop trusting, and I felt like if I continued like this, I might lose myself. It was at that point that I realized, either I fought back or I would be crushed by everything. The first spark of change came from a completely unexpected moment. I was at home, alone, trying to organize work papers, when I heard a small bark coming from the hallway. It was Luna, the dog I had rescued weeks before, looking at me with those eyes that seemed to understand everything. In that moment, something inside me clicked. If I could care for such a small and vulnerable being, I could care for myself. I could rebuild my life. I took a deep breath and realized I could no longer let Renato manipulate my feelings and my decisions. It was a mixture of courage and desperation that made me sit down, grab a pen and paper, and start writing everything down. My debts, my goals, my forgotten passions. It was the first step out of the emotional hole I was trapped in. I decided I needed to reconnect with myself. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. With each brushstroke, I felt a little of the tension melt away. I also began photographing details of the city, small moments that had previously gone unnoticed. The light shining through a tree, the reflection in a puddle, the expressions of children playing in the street. Each click reminded me that life was mine, not Renato's, and that I had the right to feel joy even after so much suffering. Walks in nature became my refuge. Feeling the wind, hearing the birds chirping, noticing my own footsteps. It was a way to breathe without the weight of manipulation. While rebuilding my routine, I confronted Renato in a few situations. It wasn't easy. He tried to blame me, convince me that I was overreacting, that my decisions were irrational. But I began to notice how my body no longer reacted too. Fear in the same way. My heart still raced during some arguments, but my mind was clearer. I began writing down everything: conversations, messages, details of the manipulation attempts. This documentation was not only to protect my legal rights, but to remind myself that I had the power to set boundaries. The divorce process was exhausting. At first, every meeting with lawyers made me doubt myself. There were times when I wanted to give up, return to the safety of a life that was hurting me. But then I remembered the promises I made to myself and my father, never to let anyone decide my worth or my future. Dr. Ricardo Mendez was instrumental, not only explaining every legal detail but also strengthening me emotionally. I learned that financial and emotional independence go hand in hand, and that giving up either would mean repeating old patterns. Through tears, sleepless nights, and small victories, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: self-confidence. Every step, even painful ones, strengthened me. My heart felt lighter when Luna and Max played in the apartment, when Sophia called me just to laugh, or when I completed a painting that made me proud. These simple moments reminded me that life isn't just about loss, but about rebuilding, and that I could create my own happiness, even if I had to start from scratch. It was during a rainy afternoon, sitting on the porch with a hot coffee, that I realized something fundamental. I no longer needed Renato's approval to validate my life. I remembered so many moments when I hesitated, swallowed words, ignored my instincts, all to maintain peace at home. But that silence of the rain, the smell of wet earth, and the loving gaze of Max and Luna made me realize that my peace depended solely on me. It was at that moment that I decided that I would not only file for divorce, but do so firmly, without fear. My heart raced, my hands sweating, but a new clarity took hold. Freedom was more important than any fear or false comfort. Getting started for real meant learning to manage my own finances and decisions without relying on anyone else. I spent weeks reviewing investments, bills, and even small savings my father had left. Each completed spreadsheet was a silent victory. Each decision made reminded me that I could be responsible for my own future. I won't lie, there were mistakes, impulsive purchases, failed investment choices, sleepless nights wondering if I was doing the right thing. But each mistake taught me something and strengthened me. I never again allowed anyone to belittle or manipulate me financially. Amidst all this, I found joy in simple gestures. Walks in the park with Luna and Max, hours spent painting, photography that captured the small miracles of everyday life. Rediscovering passions I'd forgotten about gave me a sense of belonging, something I'd never felt while Renato was around. I began to recognize myself in the mirror, not just physically, but emotionally. I was becoming someone who respected my own desires, who knew how to say no, who was proud of my own strength. Sophia was my anchor during this time. Through tears, laughter, and long phone conversations, she reminded me of who I was before I lost myself in my relationship with Renato. Every encounter with her was a reminder that true friendships endure, and that seeking support isn't a weakness. I also began to realize that, despite the pain, each step I took away from the abusive relationship brought me a freedom I'd never felt before. My self-confidence grew every day, and with it, the courage to face any situation. Finally, after months of legal and emotional battles, I received the life-changing news. The inheritance was released, in full, exactly as my father had planned. The moment I opened the documents and saw every legal decision respected, I felt a mixture of victory and relief. It wasn't just the money. It was concrete proof that I could win, that my intelligence and strength were enough to protect myself and thrive. For the first time, I looked to the future without fear, knowing that my choices would now be mine, and mine alone. With the inheritance finally released, I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility, not just about the money, but about the life I wanted to build. For the first time, I could make decisions without fear, without relying on anyone who didn't have my best interests at heart. I began planning concrete changes. I renovated the apartment, organized my finances strategically, and sought investments that truly made sense for me. Each step was a reminder that I was in control and that my life no longer needed to revolve around other people's approval. The feeling of freedom was physical. My chest felt lighter, my back less tense, and even my sleep began to improve. I also decided that part of my inheritance would go to charity. I visited shelters, spoke with staff, and heard stories that touched me deeply. The feeling of being able to help, Those in need gave me a purpose I'd never felt while consumed by the pain of loss and betrayal. At the same time, this choice reinforced something my father always said, that true wealth isn't in money, but in what we do with it. Feeling that I could transform resources into life and hope gave me renewed confidence, a sense of direction I hadn't known I possessed before. My personal life also changed radically. I began to indulge in social gatherings, new friendships, and experiences that I had previously avoided out of fear or insecurity. Every outing with Luna and Max became a celebration of freedom. Every painting I completed a reminder of my strength. I still missed my father, still remembered the anger and pain Renato had caused. But these emotions no longer paralyzed me. They existed, but they were part of a larger narrative, in which I now had a leading role. I also felt I needed to address the emotional side of my failed marriage. Therapy, long conversations with Sophia, and personal journaling helped me put everything in its place. Recognizing that I had been manipulated and that it wasn't my fault was liberating. Gradually, my anger transformed into learning. Every situation that had previously left me vulnerable was now seen clearly, as a lesson in boundaries, self-esteem, and emotional intelligence. I became able to see patterns, protect myself, and above all, value my own well-being. The culmination of this rebuilding process came on an ordinary day, when I realized I was smiling alone in the park, watching Luna chase a ball and Max sneak through the trees. Nothing extraordinary was happening, and yet I felt complete. The pain was still there, yes, but it no longer defined me. I had achieved a balance that had previously seemed impossible. Emotional freedom, financial independence, and a true connection with myself. For the first time, I understood that overcoming isn't about erasing the pain, but learning to live with it, consciously and empowered. Today, looking back, I realize that everything I've experienced has profoundly transformed me. The loss of my father, the discovery of Renato's true nature, the divorce, every night of tears and every small victory have taught me that life waits for no one. My name is Beatrice, I'm 32 years old, and I can finally look in the mirror and like what I see, not just physically, but emotionally. I'm proud of the woman I've become, someone capable of facing loss, manipulation, and uncertainty, and still rebuilding her own happiness with courage and determination. The freedom I've achieved isn't just financial, it's emotional, mental, and spiritual. I can make choices without fear, plan my future without relying on others, and enjoy the small joys of everyday life. Every walk in the park, every brushstroke, every click of my camera, every smile from Luna and Max is a constant reminder that life goes on, and that we can create our own happiness, even after betrayal and disappointment. I feel more alive, more aware, and more connected to myself than I ever have before. Reflecting on everything, I realized that the pain I felt was not in vain. It forced me to look within, to recognize my limits, but also my strength. I learned to set clear boundaries, to not tolerate emotional manipulation, and to value relationships that truly matter. Today, I have true friends, animals I love, and a routine that makes me feel complete. Life isn't perfect, but it's finally mine, built on choices that reflect my values and my essence. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone going through something similar, I would say, believe in yourself, even when it seems impossible. Pain and disappointment are temporary, but the strength you discover within yourself is lasting. Don't be afraid to start over, to make mistakes, to cry, to lose yourself and find yourself again. Every step, no matter how small, is a step forward towards the freedom and autonomy you deserve. The path is difficult, but it is possible, and each achievement becomes even more meaningful because you fought for it. Today, my life is full, secure, and happy. I use my inheritance to invest in myself, others, and causes I believe in. I know there will still be challenges, but now I know I can face them. I've rediscovered my identity, my passion, and my ability to love without depending on anyone. The victory I feel isn't about what I've achieved externally, but about the woman I've become. Free, strong, independent, and in control of my own life. I've completed my process of overcoming, and despite the scars, I'm whole. Each morning, I wake up with a renewed sense of purpose. It's not just about enjoying life, but about honoring everything I've been through to get here. I look at Luna and Max, who now run free around the apartment, and see how small victories have transformed into a routine of autonomy and happiness. Every simple gesture, making coffee, organizing my spreadsheets, finishing a painting, reminds me that every choice is mine and that I can build a path that reflects my values, my dreams, and my strength. When I feel insecure or face challenges, I remember how I survived months of emotional manipulation and fear. This past, which once seemed to crush me, now serves as fuel. I know I'm no longer the person who allowed myself to be deceived or intimidated. Each challenge I've overcome has given me clarity about my limits, confidence in my decisions, and the courage to face any situation without relying on others' approval. I've learned that true freedom comes from believing in yourself, even when everything seems to be falling apart. My motivation isn't just personal, but also extends to the people I meet. Supporting charities, sharing experiences, and inspiring those facing toxic relationships or difficult losses has become an extension of my own resilience. I've discovered that helping others and showing them that it's possible to overcome adversity further strengthens my own journey and transforms pain into purpose. Today, there's no longer room for paralyzing fear. My decisions, my steps, my dreams are all guided by awareness and courage. Each choice brings me closer to the life I've always wanted, full, secure, and independent. Even when doubts or uncertainties arise, I remember how far I've come, the battles I've won, and how capable I am of reinventing my own story. And finally, I learned that true victory lies not only in what I've achieved externally, but in the woman I've become, resilient, aware, determined, and free. Every emotional scar is now a symbol of strength. Every tear shed has become a learning experience, and every step taken reminds me that overcoming is possible. Always, even when all seems lost. Life is mine, and now, finally, I can live it fully.